Hi everyone, welcome to my channel, Abby the Food Scientist. I'm Abby, and today I am very excited because I have a very special guest. So this is Alan Kelly. You are an author, a writer, a teacher, a food scientist. You seem to do it all. Hi, Alan.
Hi, Abby. Thank you very much for inviting me to chat today. I'm looking forward to our chat.
Yes, so I have been very excited for weeks because you are someone's whose name I read all the time in journal articles, in books. I always come across your name. So I was so happy because I don't know if you remember but what brought us to this talk was actually a post on LinkedIn,
Okay.
because you were at a conference and you were part of a session that was
Mhm.
career advice to young food scientists. And I saw you tagged on this LinkedIn post, and I got so jealous. I was like, well, how are the rest of us supposed to know what he said? Like, this isn't fair. I wasn't at the conference. And and so I was just like sitting at my computer and I was like, wait a second. Maybe I'll send him a message and say, "Hey, could we sit down and I'll record it and we can share it out."
Very
Yes.
happy to tune in. That was the FOS, the European Federation of Food
Oh,
Science and
yes.
Technology, and they had a great session. In fact, including one of your colleagues in Wageningen and Kieran Ford, who is
Oh,
a
yes.
UCC graduate, also spoke at that session. So it's a very nice session.
Oh, yes, that's very cool. So I wanted to sort of pick your brain. I have a list of questions ranging from, undergraduate degree to grad school, your first jobs, your first internships, just to sort of get your perspective as someone who has gone through this yourself, but also mentored so many students.
Okay, thank you.
Perfect. So I want to start with undergraduate studies or a bachelor's degree in food science. So do you have any advice in general for bachelor students? They're taking classes, but what else do you think they should be doing during these 3 or 4 years of the bachelor's degree?
Okay, and that's a really good place to start. I guess my thoughts on it are that the nature of bachelor's degrees have changed a lot in
Mhm,
recent years, as have so many aspects of life, and what employers are looking for at the end of a degree has
mhm.
changed. Because we're no longer in the era where you need to retain facts. You don't
Yeah.
need to be able to, describe the structure of a casein micelle off the top of your head, or be able to, because all that information is constantly available to us.
Mhm,
Compared to, one time where retaining knowledge was one of the key things in learning. It's all about how we use information now, and how we access information, and how we solve problems. And and I think it's worth being very mindful of what employers are looking for, as well as expecting a good grounding in food science program, is somebody who has, because they say, okay, I'm going to interview 50 people today who have a good grounding in food science. Are the extra things this person will bring to my team?
mhm,
What are the extra skills and values that they can bring? How can they show me that and this is often the things that happen outside the lecture room. And obviously the lecture content is hugely important for giving you the grounding and the background and the understanding of the area. But it's things like projects. It's things like, it's what do you highlight in your CV? What do you show? What are your opportunities to show leadership? So areas which are particularly good for that are projects, would be like we do in Cork, and a lot of colleges do, like team product development projects. And they're great because you can get to see so many different aspects of the food process, if you like. Internships are hugely important. They're really, really important. But it doesn't also even have to be curricular stuff. There could be a lot of things which are really important, like showing leadership in a club or a society that you've done, that you've taken it's thinking about, as well as obviously having the most enriching and enjoyable and rewarding college experience that you can. Okay, at the end of the day, what's going to make me stand out from other
mhm.
graduates? How can I articulate that in my CV and in an interview? And along the way have lots of fun while you're a student,
Yes,
as
yeah,
you're supposed to do.
exactly.
So there's some initial thoughts, but it's certain things are, I guess, taken for granted now, that you've been to a good school, you've got a good program. We know what graduates of that school can do, but what makes you different? How can you, how can you stand? And it's not, I know more about the case of myself than anyone else. I don't know. I come back to that example, but it's often like it's amazing. What used to be almost a pejorative term, which was the soft skills, are now often the most
Mhm.
important things. So it's recognizing that. And even more so, which maybe we'll talk about a little while about a PhD level, that these are really
Mhm.
important focus not just on what you know, but what you can do and who you are, and what
Right.
makes you different.
Yes. And I think what's so interesting about a bachelor's degree now is, like you said, you're required to learn all this information, but that's just the bare minimum you could do,
Hmm.
right? So, like,
Exactly.
what employers are looking for is someone who is a team player, can work on a team, has good communication skills.
Yeah.
All of that you might have to go outside the classroom to
Yeah.
learn.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And
Yes.
placements, internships, projects, these are all really good opportunities to do this. um and they don't always, and I think employers now know, that it's not just about academic ability. You're looking at a whole
Hmm.
picture of what somebody can do. Somebody could be a fantastic fit for a job and they're not necessarily the top of the class. You know what I mean?
Right.
That
Yes.
these are all
Yeah.
very different skill sets. And then it comes on to, when you come towards the end of your bachelor's, what's next? Are you thinking about a master's? Are you thinking about a PhD? What's the long-term plan? And trying to kind of, I guess, have the experiences and the awareness of what of what you want to do. It's funny if we think about internships for a minute. I always say to students when they go on internship, I say,
Mhm.
and it applies maybe in other parts too, but particularly in internships, like it's like the single most powerful question you can ask is when, and usually a question most people have no problem answering is, when there's somebody who's in a job you find interesting, ask them, how did you get here? What was
Yes.
your path? Why did you, like, is this your first job? Is it your third job? Did you do a
Mhm.
master's? Did you do a PhD? Have you moved within the company? And it's funny, it's that usually people are very happy to talk about their own paths. And you can learn so much as a student about how the world works. And I always say
Mhm.
to students, make the most of that. You won't randomly go up to the boss on your first day and ask them, but when you're in a comfortable position, because like with an internship, it's really important. They're great because you can have, I always say there's multiple things you can get. Obviously, you've experience, which
Mhm.
is really valuable. You have hopefully a good reference, which an employer will look for. But what's really important is you have a sense of what you want to do and and equally importantly, what you
Yes.
don't want to do. Because an
Yes.
outcome of an internship could be equally going, oh no, I definitely don't want to do that, and
Yes.
and that's for me, and that's, and being able to say, okay, here are my strengths, and here's where I think I can fit in, could be, and where I think I wouldn't fit in, and I can think of examples of that from my own career history, very clear,
Mhm.
dramatic examples of that I think make me really think about that.
Yes. Yeah, I have often told students, because in the US especially, internships are usually 3 months over summer. 3
Mm,
months is short,
yeah.
very short.
Mm,
And some students, maybe they wanted an internship in product development, but
mhm.
instead they could find one in food manufacturing. And I sit them down and I say, one, you might actually really enjoy this. You don't know that yet.
Exactly.
But at the very least, after 3 months, you can say to yourself, I don't want to do this the rest of my life.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
that's really important. Yeah, our
Yeah.
in Cork, our internships would typically be 6 months, but
Mm.
exactly the same applies. That's a really important outcome. And you see students who have a kind of a fork in their career.
Yeah.
Like, for example, in Cork, we have a degree in nutrition, and some students go into
Mm.
industry, some students go into, say, dietetics type of route, and we have a master's in that. And often a placement can be really the formative decision making point for
Yeah.
them to know this is the path that I want to take.
Yes.
um, for myself when I was in college. And I'll make a confession, I didn't study food science.
Oh,
I'm not a food
really?
science graduate. I grew up in Dublin. I studied a degree in biotechnology, which
Okay.
is about industrial applications of biology, and obviously food is one of them. And for some reason, food just absolutely just beckoned to me. It was
Yeah.
because for somebody who was really interested since a child in science, in all aspects of science. All I knew, all I wanted to do was something in science from a
Mhm.
very young age, and I didn't come from a science family at all. Um, so I don't know what it was, some random mutation in my genes put me in this path. But I went to college and we were exposed to a number of things, including food. And to me, like as a kind of a science mad kid, it was like, food is the area where, the challenges are real and immediate. And the path, I
Hmm.
always say food science is the science where the path from fundamental to applied is the shortest.
Yeah.
That everything you do has an implication and has an everyday implication. But yet the science behind it, if you take something like milk, is as challenging and as rewarding and as engrossing as you could find anywhere. So it was kind of the short-term reward circuits fired
Yeah.
for me. And when I was
Hmm.
in college, then I did an internship in a brewery. So I decided I wanted to be a brewer. I was convinced this is going to be my. So I applied for very few jobs when I was in final year because I decided I wanted to be a brewer. And I didn't get. I applied for the largest brewery in Ireland, and
Oh.
probably one of the largest in the world, and I got to the final stage, and I got a job offer with a food company instead that
Hmm.
I'd also applied to. So I went to work for them, and because again, like my internship had set me very firmly on a food industry path, but I discovered when I went to industry that it wasn't for me
Hmm.
in that position, and I decided pretty quickly that no, I think I'm going to go back to college. And it
Right.
was that decision, and in a way, you could say that's why it was kind of, I don't know, luck or something, that like when I kind of I had a kind of a negative experience going to industry, but I wouldn't have ended up in Cork if I hadn't gone down
Yes.
that path because it redirected
Hmm.
me. And it took me because I said, I think I'd like to go back to college and maybe do a postgrad in food. And everyone said, it was an Irish company. And they said, well, if you want to do it, you have to go to Cork. And I was like, I'm from Dublin. Where's Cork? I had to look on a map to
Right.
find out where it was. And
Mhm.
that's how I ended up. I ended up
Wow.
knocking on professors' doors and happening to be in the right place at the right time. And one of them had some funding and was able to take me on. So it was kind of a circuitous path and I've never left
Yes.
30 and a
Yes.
bit years later. So it was a kind of a circuitous path that took me there. But so it's about, sometimes in life and in careers, fate intervenes in mysterious ways that you don't always appreciate at the time,
Yes,
you know?
yes, yes. I 100% agree because I would have finished my bachelor's degree in food science 10 years ago. And if I look back on my path since then, people often ask, or students will ask, well, how did you know? How did you get here? Sometimes I didn't know. Sometimes stuff just happened and I went with it and it turned into a great opportunity. Um, for
Exactly.
example, when I was a senior, I didn't know what I wanted to do the next step. And I just had randomly a meeting with my advisor to advise on like classes to take. And right before my meeting, he got a call that a grant was funded. And
Hmm.
after he receives that good news, guess what student walked in his office and he thought, oh, Abby would be a great student to have for a master's degree, a PhD. And like it just was fate. It
A
just
hundred
happened that
percent.
way.
100%. I can think of so many examples of some students who end up and getting a postgrad, a master's or PhD after a long, convoluted recruitment process, and some who
Right.
get it because they happen to be there in the professor's office at the right time
Yes.
when
Yes.
something comes up. So there is luck, but I guess it's about having the awareness yourself and trying to position yourself to make the most of those opportunities should they
Right.
arise.
Yes.
Having a good network and a good network of connections and having people who mightn't, letting your professors know as an undergraduate, if you're thinking about
Mhm.
graduate school, that you're interested and then, even if it's not, if they don't have something themselves, having somebody in your corner who can point you in the right
Yes.
direction and say, well, I heard about a colleague who's looking for something, or I know here's an ad I got from a colleague in Denmark or in the Netherlands. Why don't you apply for this? Because, academics have a network and they share information. It's like I have a position
Totally.
coming up. I don't have a student right now that that's an immediate candidate. So I'm going to send it out to my network. And you
Mhm.
want to be tied into that by
Yes.
being on good terms with a person who might be in that kind of network.
Right. And I think we say it's luck or fate, but we were chatting before we recorded, and you can make your own luck, right? So, yeah, I say I walked into his office at the right time,
Yeah.
but behind that was like 4 years of working very hard in my classes, like being a very good
Yeah.
student, being
Yeah.
curious, asking
Mhm.
him questions about his research. So,
Yeah.
like, you can put yourself in a
Exactly.
place.
Yeah.
where it seems like good things are just happening to you.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like Pasteur said, chance favors the prepared mind. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, uh,
Yes.
you're more likely to have the right kind of luck if you do the homework first.
Yes, exactly. If you put the work in,
Yeah,
then it seems like the good things just are attracted
yeah,
to you somehow.
yeah.
No, no. I think that's some great advice on bachelor's degrees. So
Mhm,
I want to move us along. I think we touched on this a little bit, but I wanted
mhm.
to talk about internships. Like, do you have any advice on how important an internship opportunity is for food science students?
Well, I think it's really important for I often think for students, like we see more personal growth and development over the six
Hmm.
months of an internship than over maybe the years before they went on an internship. So all of our students in Cork in food science and nutrition programs go on an internship for 6 months. And, in a good university, I think operating an internship program, there's no such thing as a bad internship in a way,
Yes.
because you can because they know what works and what doesn't work, and hopefully are going to send you to somewhere. And one of the interesting debates that I think students often have is what are the merits of working for a large company versus working for a
Hmm.
small company. And they're very different sets of experiences with positives and negatives to both,
Right.
but mainly positives. But like because within large company, like you can be put in one department or one area. You could be in quality or production or
Right.
micro or analysis or MPD. And I always say to students, if you're in that position, one of the really important questions, like I say, about asking people about their career paths, another important question is, you know, after you settle in for a while, and we mentor the students and we try and help them with this, is, you know don't look outside your box as much as you can, and
Hmm.
say, and most companies will facilitate this. Could I, if I'm in micro, could I shadow somebody in R&D? Could I spend a day, just to get a feel for what the other areas are like, that don't come out and say, I never left the lab I was put in. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? Don't
Yeah.
think. And then, like, if you compare that to a small company, and lots of our students will go working for small companies, you can end up doing a bit of everything. You mightn't get a feel for how a large corporate structure works and how a business works, but you can get a feel for, because every day you could be doing something different. And there's fantastic experience to be got from that. So I don't, so I think, most universities will know they'll send people to employers who will give them a good experience, but be open minded as to what that might
Yes.
be. And sometimes people go, "Oh, I'm not sure," because our students do apply, they do interviews, and maybe they're hoping for one opportunity that doesn't come to get something else. But very rarely, if they go into it with the right mind, do they come back having it. And it's great, like companies in particular that give students responsibility. I remember seeing a
Hmm.
student who I was mentoring in a dairy company this year, and I went down to meet them. We meet our students on placement, which is great for the academics. That it's a great
Yes.
way of keeping our links with industry and seeing what's going on in the real world. To go and meet our students and their mentors and see their workplace. And I remember them telling me, I did this project, and it was that they could say it saved the company. They told me it saved the company this number of
Yes.
€1,000. And you could just see, like, a light had gone on or a fire had been lit in
Hmm.
that student. They
Yeah.
could see, oh, this is, a word that's used an awful lot in research now is impact, but this is real.
Right.
Student could see, I did that. And the
Yeah.
pride and the achievement and the accomplishment of being able to put your name on something and say, you know, I did something that had an impact. I think
Hmm.
that's the kind of experience that if you get on placement, I think it really sets you on a path then. You know what I mean? And say, this
Yes.
is what I want to do.
Yes. No, I like how you talked about small and large food companies, because
Yeah.
one of my internships was at a very small spray drying facility in northern Wisconsin, like middle of nowhere Wisconsin. The population of the town was less than 1,000. And this was not the ideal place I wanted to spend my summer of college at, but it was a great place to do an internship, because whenever anything new happened in the whole facility, someone would grab me and be like, Abby, you got to come see this. This
Yeah.
happens once a year. Abby, we're
Yeah.
doing
Yeah.
this today. Why
Yeah.
don't you meet us then? Like,
Yeah.
because people at a small company will always remember and think of you. So you see everything. You're
Everything.
part of
Exactly.
everything. I
Yeah.
in that internship, I was part of manufacturing. I did sensory analysis. I did quality assurance all in one summer. It was an amazing opportunity. And the next summer, because I had this food manufacturing experience, the next summer, I really aimed to get an internship with Nestle because
Mhm.
they were impressed that I had this
Yeah,
experience that at first I was like, I don't want to go to northern Wisconsin. But I
yeah,
knew, like, you know what?
yeah,
Make the best of it. And it was
100%.
such a good
Yeah,
experience. And it got me to the next step
yeah,
for my next internship.
yeah, 100% agree. So it's very it's a very important complement to your academic studies to be able to do
Yes.
these kind of things.
Yeah,
Mhm.
in internships, I mean, such good hands-on experience, and I don't know if this happens in Cork, but often internships can lead to full-time jobs.
Yeah,
It's like an extended interview,
yeah.
you
It
know?
is a two-way interview too, though.
Yes.
It's them interviewing you and you interviewing them as a place you might like to work for.
Yes.
So it does happen. It maybe doesn't happen quite as often as I guess intuitively it might.
Mhm.
Maybe, I don't know, 20% of our graduates probably end up going, their
Yes.
first job is their placement employer.
Yes, yeah.
But
I
all
would
of our
say
students get jobs,
yeah,
but it's just maybe not as many of them go for whatever reason.
right. Right.
Mhm.
No. And so I want to move on to graduate studies or PhD or master's degrees because probably on my YouTube channel, the questions I get most are always related to graduate school, master's degree, that type of thing. So I'm wondering, do you have any advice on how does someone figure out if grad school is a good option for them? Or maybe they should go into industry. Like how do you know
Mhm.
if it's a good thing for someone?
And that's a really interesting, and it's a hugely important question. And I do a lot of workshops and talks to students about deciding to go
Okay.
to grad school or not. And it kind of links back to the question I said you asked during internship of what's your career path, asking people,
Yeah.
how did you get here? And getting a feeling for what's the expectation, because it's interesting, like you kind of put it as a choice, do I go to grad school or do I go to
Yeah.
industry? But in the food area, those two things are far from are
Hmm.
mutually exclusive, and that,
Yeah.
and again, I was dean of graduate studies for my university for 7 years, so I was responsible for seeing how PhD studies worked in every discipline, the humanities and law. And I got a real feel for it. And one of the things that struck me about food is I don't want to say food is different, but there's far more absorptive capacity and demand for PhD graduates in food than there is in a lot of areas. So most of my PhD graduates over the years that I've supervised or co-supervised 50 or 60 students,
Hmm.
nearly all of them are in industry with
Yeah.
PhDs. And that's different to a lot of disciplines. There was a time when you did a PhD basically because you wanted to be an academic. Even when I did a
Right.
PhD in the 1990s, you were going to learn something and you were going to stay studying that thing for the rest of your
Hmm.
career. And that's what you were doing. And not many people did it. Maybe it's still the same in some areas, but in general, certainly in food, it's a completely different perspective. Like I would have said 30 years ago, if you go into a research department of a company, it might have been like four people with a master's to one person with a PhD. It's almost flipped now.
Yeah.
And that's why it goes back to the career paths. What you need to ask is, like, if you're coming to the end of a bachelor's or master's and thinking about it, it's never or shouldn't be a question of where do I want to be next year. And I know this is a bit of a cliche, but it's true. It's like, what's the 10-year plan?
Yeah.
Where do I want to be in 10 years? What are my ideal jobs in 10 years? And is the degree I have on its own enough for that? Or should I be doing it? That's the question you need to ask. And for most career paths today, and within the food, there's a fairly good kind of hierarchy of what
Hmm.
your minimum entry requirements are. Again, in a more defined way that you might find in other sectors. So obviously, if you want to be an academic, you think
Right.
about a PhD. If you want to be a researcher, in any sector, you want to
Hmm.
be you want to have a PhD. If you want to have a but if you want to go into industry and go into the R&D department, then you're probably going to be expected to have a PhD.
Yes.
If or at least your opportunities, the level you come in at, the salary you might be offered and the promotion opportunities you might have might be better with a PhD than they would with another degree. Whereas if you're maybe in production on the floor with, in operations, a PhD might be a pre-requirement for those roles. And lots of our
Mhm.
graduates go into those roles. So it really is a question of not thinking about what do I want to do for the next few years, but where do I think my career path is going, and is a PhD an investment that I should make now in my time to position myself for those jobs when they come along. Because you might have students who go back. I mean, I had a student recently and she went back to her after her PhD to a replacement employer, but there's no doubt she's going into a different job than she would
Yeah.
have done if she'd gone in there with a bachelor's. You know, so it's very much, and that links to it. And certainly in Ireland and a lot of countries, I think in recent last 20 or 30 years, there's been a lot of focus on what are the skills that a PhD gains,
Mm.
because it's really important to recognize that in the future you might go into a lot of job interviews that, and some people kind of react negatively to this, but it
Yeah.
really is a fact, is with people who don't care what your thesis is.
Yeah.
They're just interested in what you can do,
Yes.
and I think that's a really important mindset change. That often you're not being hired because you're an expert in cheese ripening or an expert in whatever it might be, or meat proteomics or whatever you might have studied. Like they almost, again, I wouldn't say to take for granted, but they know you have that
Right.
expertise, but that's probably not the job that they're hiring you for. They're
Yeah.
interested in. If I could tell you one kind of anecdote that was very
Yeah.
powerful for me, that always kind of landed with me and I often quote it, was I organized a workshop years ago on PhD careers in the humanities, right?
Yeah.
Non-academic. And it's really
Oh.
important too that academics can have a kind of a snobbiness about this, that, oh,
Yeah.
don't talk to me about going into industry. What am I,
Mhm.
you know what I mean? And it should never be seen that this is the path for people who don't want to be an academic. It's now the main path, not the alternate,
Yes.
I would
Yeah.
say in many cases. But so it was and a guy came in and he was working. He had done a PhD in some obscure British
Mm.
poet of the 19th century, right? So
Ah.
in English, he was a graduate of English and history. He'd studied in Cambridge, and he was now working years after graduation with the largest sports agency firm in the world. And he was flying around the world, like doing like sponsorship deals for the World Cup and for the Ryder Cup and all of these things. And that was his job, with a PhD in English poetry. And he said when he got a job, like he obviously asked him, why'd you hire me? Why me? And why do you have so many PhDs here in random disciplines working for you as they did? And they said basically it was very simple, that a PhD was like somebody who could take on a big challenge and see it through to
Mm.
successful completion. They wanted
Mhm.
somebody who wasn't afraid to commit to doing something big and then delivered it. And that to them was a kind of and obviously, you assume certain level of you know, other things come along, intellectual ability or whatever else. But the key thing that they liked about people with PhDs is they can take on something big and see it through.
Yeah.
And now he was having probably making more money than any academic ever
Right.
will in his
Oh,
job. You know what
absolutely.
I mean? And so I just thought that was very powerful illustration, and that ultimately the product of any PhD is, it's interesting. It's not just the thesis. It's not
Oh.
it's the person.
Yeah.
And the person is A, an expert in this topic, but B, can do so much more besides. So
Yeah.
you need to just make the decision of whether to do a PhD or not. Number one, you have to ask, what's the long-term plan? To the extent that plans change. I mean, if you'd asked
Mhm.
me that as an undergraduate, I'd have said, I want to be a brewer. I have no intention of doing a PhD. So plans change. But number two, um, you have to ask then, do I have the skill set and the
Mhm.
wherewithal to do this? Do I know what's involved?
Right.
Even at thinking, oh yes, I want to be an R&D, leader, so therefore I want to do this. So I'll take the first PhD that comes along. You need to then think, because you have to commit to this thing for 3, 4,
Yes.
5 years. You have to work very closely with one. You're going to be in a class of your own, essentially, with your own topic. You're going to have to manage a project. You're going to have to lead it. You're going to have to, you know write and communicate and do all kinds of things at a very high level.
Yeah.
You're going to have to, and these are all the skills, by the way, you're learning along the way, that you're not
Yes.
knowing you're learning, that your employers are looking for. And like I always say, like, don't ever pick a PhD in a topic you don't really care about, because you
Hmm.
need to invest and commit to this. And doing it purely as a means to an end is going to be a very tough path, because you're going to be, I don't want to over dramatize it, but this is going to be your life for the next number of years.
Yes,
And you
yes.
don't want to, you say, oh, I'll do whatever because it's the end justifies the means. Like, you need to make sure that it's something that'll put up with the hard work and long hours and the disappointments and the frustrations,
Hmm.
and that you will enjoy doing it as well as get something out of doing it. And that's why it's important, and like, it's different. Like, a very big kind of a branch point for people doing a PhD, which is really profound, is, are you doing it at your own institution, or are you going somewhere else? You know, and
Hmm.
are you, like, because in your own institution you can do far more intelligence gathering. You can wander into the professor's lab and talk to their students
Right.
and find out what do they really like. Whereas, I always think, I mean, I've never done it, but I always think, like, I've had lots of students come from China, come from India, come
Hmm.
from the other side of the world, who just up sticks and come to
Yeah.
Ireland, and they, some cases, this is a life-changing move for them, that they're taking a gamble on
Yep.
this working out, and that's a really difficult decision to make,
Yes.
and as a host and as a supervisor, it's an enormous responsibility to think that this person has now done that. And this is, as opposed to the person who's living down the street from the university, and who's being an
Right.
undergraduate, so to travel, is an extra level of commitment, to up
Hmm.
sticks and go to the US or go to Europe or go to wherever else to do your PhD. And it's also harder to scout out the ground, to find out
Yes.
what exactly are you getting into, what
Hmm.
are you, and today, lots of interviews and discussions are held on Zoom, and Teams, but so you might end up like starting a PhD in a place you've never actually visited, which I think is
Yes.
is, is a leap of faith. I
Yes.
think that I often describe my decision to come to Cork and being lucky, but it was a kind of a leap of faith,
Yep.
to say,
Hmm.
it's like you close your eyes and you jump, you got to
Yes.
think, I got to go with my gut and think, is this going to work? And that's, at some point things come down to that. But it's like, preparing, trying to make your own luck. It's trying to minimize the risk in the decisions you take by
Yes.
doing as much homework as you can. I think is really
Right.
important.
No, and I really like the advice, the topic you choose for your research, you have to like. My second thing I think you have to like is your advisor. Don't just
Exactly.
pick an advisor because they have a project, because that person is your lifeline for
Exactly.
years.
Exactly. 100%. That's why I say, if you can talk to their students, try and
Hmm.
find out what are they particularly if it's somebody you've encountered as an undergraduate, you've heard them lecture, and you know a certain amount about them, it's less of a risk. But if it's somebody who you only know through their papers, that can be very
Right.
different to what it's like working with them on a day-to-day basis. So for sure, it's
Yes.
really important to try and find out as much as you can about what it's like to work with this person.
Yes, yeah. I always find it surprising when people say graduate school was their backup choice, because as someone who has done graduate school, I'm like, no, you have to want it, because
Yeah.
there's going to be days that are very, very hard, even
Yeah.
under the best of
Yeah, yeah,
circumstances.
absolutely. And that's I know this might sound like, I don't know, that's not a bad thing. I always say you never understand anything as well as when it stops working. That's where
Yes.
your learnings come in. You have a piece of equipment that you just press a button and it works, but you
Yep.
never have to stop and think about what it's doing until it stops working. And the same when an
Yep.
experiment doesn't work. Like, that's where a lot of learnings come in. And
Yep.
it's a lot of the skills that are important and that people expect from somebody with a PhD is independent problem solving and
Yep.
troubleshooting. That you're not just, everybody in the class is doing the same thing, so I'm following a path.
Hmm.
You've made your own path and you've solved your own problems and you've encountered these hurdles. And that's so it's important never to be discouraged when things don't work right in research.
Yep.
Obviously, if they don't work right for a long time, it's a problem.
Yeah.
But otherwise, it can be and I often think, you know we must never forget, like, some of the most important words in science are, if you pardon the expression, oh shit, it's like, because it's like,
Yes.
you know that's not what I expected, you know
Yes. Yes.
and how many really important discoveries and developments happened, so many things in the world, including America, were discovered by people who weren't looking for them at the time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's a, often the thing that turns out to be really important is the thing you didn't expect. And the thing that might have seemed weird at first, it might have seemed like that experiment didn't work, and it might be that the experiment didn't work. It might have been that your preconception of what the result might look like did not reflect what was actually going to happen, if that makes sense.
Yes. Yeah. And in hindsight, I can see the best skill I learned during my PhD was to be an independent problem solver. But I
Exactly.
think the transition from bachelor's degree to graduate school and master's or PhD, that in bachelor's degree, you just got to follow the rules,
Yeah,
basically. You follow the directions, you know what to do
yeah,
to do well, to get a good grade. But a master's and PhD is not like that. You have to get very used to failing.
exactly. And that's, as I say, where a lot of the learning and the personal growth and it mightn't feel like it at the time, but in
Yes.
retrospect,
Yes.
it's usually, where a lot of development comes in is when these hurdles are thrown at you and you learn how to overcome them. As I
Yes.
say, it
Yeah.
might feel like it at the time.
No, it's hard at the time, but then you see, years after doing that, you no longer like get frazzled or upset when things go wrong.
Yeah,
You're like, okay, let's go attack it. Like, let's go see the problem. Show me what
yeah,
the issue is. We're gonna figure this out.
yeah,
It's very useful in life.
yeah, for sure, for sure.
Yes.
And it's
All
the
right.
independence because in your first year, you might be coming into your advisor asking them, what do you do next? But like
Yes.
it's there's a process, a term that's often used, maybe it's not a great term for it, but weaning.
Yeah. Yeah.
You need to be telling them after a while, this is what
Right.
happens next, because you'll know more about it than they do. At least you should if everything's working right.
Right. No, I remember, by the end of my PhD, if I encountered a problem, I did not go to my advisor, right? I went to my advisor when I used all the solutions I could come up with, and they
Yeah,
also all failed. So
yeah,
that by the time I went to an advisor, I said, this happened and, it didn't work. And he'd be like, did you do this? Yeah, I did that right away. I did that. Okay,
yeah,
well, did you do this? Yeah, I did that. It didn't work either. Well, did you do this? Yeah. Like, you become the independent
yeah,
researcher.
yeah. And I remember once on a video I saw somewhere about supervision.
Yeah.
Again, when I was dean, I was like a lot of these things. And there was a quote from someone I think there's a person in Scotland who does a lot of training of supervisors and things. And she said that like a good supervisor should be like a waiter in a really good restaurant, in that they're not constantly in your face asking what you
Yes.
need, but the minute you put up your hand, they're
Yes.
there with what you need.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
That they're it's being not overly smothering you, but being there as your safety net to go back to when
Yes.
you get stuck. And that's
Exactly.
a nice way
Exactly.
to describe it.
Yes, like giving you the room to grow and
Yeah,
fail, but not looking over your shoulder as you're failing, but being
yeah,
there
yeah.
to, yeah.
Yeah, and that was certainly my own experience as a PhD
Yes.
student, because my supervisor in Cork, like I was one of their last students, so they were very much on the
Oh,
the kind of towards the end of their career, but they gave me enormous room, maybe too much room, but
yeah.
I learned an
Yes.
awful lot. And you learn things about yourself too. Like it was funny.
Yeah.
I used to think that I was very unfocused I was very unfocused as a research student. I had lots of ideas, but I didn't know how to put them into practice, and I didn't know how to plan things properly. And I remember once somebody who gave me a present, and it was a day-to-day diary, and I discovered that was what I was missing. I was a list maker who had never realized. And I was
Oh,
like, once I start writing things down, I never realized I never tried to use a kind of a list system or like a calendar, but I had this, need in me that was unmet, that this is what I needed was
right.
structure. And,
Yeah.
it was like that had something as small as that realization for, everybody's different about how they manage their time, but I needed structure that I'd never used or never
Hmm.
recognized that I used. And once I kind of clicked into place,
Yes. Yeah.
everything was much smoother after that. I
Right.
joked that, like I was so grateful to that person I had to marry them as a thank you. So I was like, it
Yes.
was, yeah, it was like,
Yes.
uh, you
No.
know, uh, um, because it had such an impact on my research, was just discovering that what I needed was structure, lists, and timelines. So
Yes. No, I do agree. During my PhD, you obviously learn about your research, but you will learn a lot about yourself during that
Exactly.
time as well.
Yeah, yeah,
Yes.
absolutely.
No.
Mm,
So I think we should move on to the last topic, which
okay.
I wanted to touch on, which was landing your first job. So do you have any advice on like how to start off a successful career or what skills students should be trying to have at this point?
And do you mean post bachelor's or post PhD or both?
Um, let's do post bachelor's. Yes, yeah.
Yeah. Um, Again, I think it's important to be open-minded.
Yeah.
That often the best way to get a job is to get this might sound like a strange get another job, is to recognize when you're leaving. And like the internship should be a big influence if you've had the
Yes.
opportunity to do it in terms of helping you to line this up. But like I think it's important to recognize that certainly in the modern world, it's not that if I take this job, this is what I'll do for 40 years. You know what I mean? That's
Right.
not the way anymore. So, being in the job market and being in employment is a very good way to get a job, to
Yeah.
find. So therefore, like I know in the dairy sector in Ireland, I guess in lots of countries, there's lots of mobility. People move and they switch
Yes.
jobs all the time. So, don't over obsess on your first job.
Hmm.
Maybe your first job turns out to be the one, but if 6 months on you realize
Yes.
this isn't the one, then you move on, and people do. But at least you have the comfort you can stay where you are until you find, hopefully, until you find
Yes.
what you want to move on to. So I'd say, and be prepared. Like if again go back to kind of something we talked about earlier, like what makes you stand out from the crowd? What are
Hmm.
your unique? It's a very marketing buzzword term, but what are your unique selling points? What in an interview, like how can you audit or critically articulate what makes you different? What's the quirky thing or the thing that you think, okay, this is how I can persuade this employer. Like what do I think they're looking for, and how can I give them that as honestly as possible without selling them something that I'm not. Does
Yeah.
so I think try and don't be overly obsessed with finding the perfect job. Uh, Keep an open mind. Like reflect on what you've heard, what other people have told you about what their career paths have been, what you know about the employer, and take that leap of faith. I guess it's not a very
Yes.
precise solution, but
No,
that's the
no.
best I can do.
No, I really like your point of don't overthink your first job because I've seen students almost be paralyzed from this decision. Like, should
Yeah,
they
yeah,
take this job or should they keep looking? Because they think this could be the rest of my life.
yeah,
But like in 6 months, you might be somewhere else. In a year, you're
yeah,
somewhere else. You
yeah,
don't know where life is taking you. And you might as well have a job and grow some skills, get some
exactly.
connections in
Yeah,
the food industry,
yeah.
anyways.
Build your CV for sure.
Yes. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So just thinking as one piece of advice, if I could, though,
Yes.
on the PhDs and going
Oh,
into
yeah.
industry, just one final thought, which may be
Yeah.
useful. Um, it's important to think, like, say, if you decide, or in your third or fourth year, yes, I'm definitely going to get an industry job. One of the things that can, and again, it's different in different countries. I think in the
Hmm.
Netherlands, there's quite an explicit expectation of publication. I just want to talk
Hmm.
about
Hmm.
publication for a second.
Yes.
Um, and there's a bit of an expectation that you publish before you submit your thesis. In
Yes.
other countries, it's not as explicit as that.
Hmm.
And often then, if you think you're going into industry, submitting your thesis and submitting publications, getting your work published aren't necessarily the same thing.
Hmm.
And it's just really important because I've seen people who go into industry for a few years after a PhD, say, and then decide, I think I'm going to come back to research or academia. And then it's like, oh, now I wish I'd written up those papers for my CV, because that's
Yes.
what I need. So
Yes.
never forget that the work that you do, trying to get it recorded and trying to get it published while you're in grad school, because you never know, even if you think you won't need them now, maybe in the future they're the thing that's going to be really important to have on your
Hmm.
CV. So a little bit of a pitch, and it's also your supervisors can be really disappointed if you go and don't publish this nice work,
Yes. Yes.
uh, but it does, and maybe as a final point, it does lead to I think that of all the skills, and we've touched on a lot of skills like about planning and
Mhm.
organization and leadership and teamwork that are important. But like to me, it often always comes back to most important skills are communication skills.
Yes.
I think to want to focus on and to really think about how do I improve as an undergraduate and as a particularly as a PhD student on your communication skills. But how do you how do you write? How do you how do you write academic papers and how do you go to conference? That's part of it, but it's a lot more than that. And that's
Mhm.
what's really important. How do you explain? How do you enthuse? How do you argue? How do you persuade? How do
Right.
you I mean, we saw it in so many areas like researchers in COVID-19, researchers in climate, who one minute could be talking to absolute experts and next minute are talking to the public or the media.
Yes.
A modern researcher needs like a Swiss Army knife of tools
You're right.
of communication skills that they can talk to the public, they can talk to, and I think universities, we did a lot of it in Cork, having public speaking competitions,
Mhm.
translating your research into non-specialist language competitions. Like these are really important things in graduate school to try and be aware of that, like one of your most important skill sets that you might think about, at least in some ways, is your communication skills, and often it can be your strength and
Yeah.
the thing that gets you that job. So take every opportunity to communicate, not just in a high level academic sense, but take every opportunity. Lots of countries and university, and they're great fun of competitions and programs for
Yes.
students to compete. And I think that can be a great way to get extra skill set. There's a whole new like career path out there now, like psychon, for science
Yes,
communicators.
absolutely. Yeah.
About people whose professional job working for research centers or working for the media, and their job is to translate complex science into everyday
Mhm.
language. And that's a whole new career path that maybe didn't exist 10 years ago. And I think I know some of our PhDs who've, shown great potential as communicators, have gone on to really rewarding careers in that. So it's just an interesting new branch post PhD, maybe even post bachelor's and masters, that people might be aware of that, so no, I think it's really important. I wrote a book a few years ago called How Scientists Communicate,
Yes.
specifically because I think this is such an important skill set. So
Yes, it's such a valuable skill. I work with a lot of students, bachelor's, master's, PhD, and good communication skills are very
yeah,
appreciated and prevent a lot of issues. Like it's so
absolutely.
key.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it is,
Yeah.
and it's funny. I always say one of the most important, and it's linked to communication skills, is diplomacy skills
Yes.
and negotiation skills. As a
Hmm.
PhD student, you often are in a position where you need lots of people to help you at various
Right.
points. And learning, and that's a really important skill set
Yes.
too, that's often kind of overlooked, is the ability to work with people, to realize how to work with people and how to get people to do what you need them to do and what you need to do
Right.
for them in return. So
Yep. Yes. No,
okay.
it's yeah, an excellent skill. But I know I want to get you off to your meeting and your next meeting. I know you got a busy schedule, but I have really enjoyed this, getting your advice
So
and
have
picking
I.
your
Thanks very
brain.
much, Abby. And I hope
Yes,
it's
no.
useful and thanks once again for the invitation. I was really pleased to be asked and I enjoyed our chat.
Yes. No, I was so excited when you responded. So thank you for responding. But I know a lot of other people are going to really appreciate your advice as well.
Thanks very much, Abby. It was lovely to talk to you. Thank you.
Yes, you as well. Bye.
Bye.